Chicano musicians have been embedded in popular music for nearly a century. I'd like to introduce you to three of my mentors and heroes in music.
Well, my dad was a professional singer who played guitar, and I'd hear him practicing scales a lot and stuff like that, and music was just part of my upbringing. We did everything. He was a Latin singer, pop, Latin. And yeah, he was a featured artist at La Golondrina in Alveda Street. And he was there for 20 years. He was pretty well known in the day. He did a lot of TV shows and did some movies and stuff. And he was kind of like a local celebrity kind of guy. But I was 15 years old, and he goes, "Get off school tomorrow." I go, "Why?" He goes, "Well, I'm not going to tell you, but just get off school." So he didn't even tell me what we were doing. So he drags me over to, I shouldn't say that, but to Universal City to be in an Elvis movie. And it was ridiculous. Of course, you're hanging with the king. And at the time I was into, Creedence Clearwater and the Beatles. We didn't care about Elvis at that time. Of course, everybody knows he's an icon now, but we weren't thinking about Elvis Presley. But on the lunch break, everybody was kind of afraid to talk to him, And the Sweet Inspirations were sitting on the couch too. The girls from Darlene Love was in there. She was one of the girls in the Sweet Inspirations. And I just said, "Hey Elvis, he was getting ready to go to lunch, and nobody was around except me and him. And I said, "Can we play a blues together?" And I just started going. And he started singing, I think it might have been Steamroller Baby, but that's to me like the first time where I was validated by somebody that's great, because he told me, he said, "Play a solo." I played a solo, something like that. He said, "Take it away, Bobby." And then we finished the song, and he goes, "Hey, Bobby, you're all right." So he validated me, and if the king says you're good, you're good. I mean, then you have this confidence about yourself. Well, my dad had me taking lessons over at Johnny Thompson's, and there was a guitar player who was a guitar player for Steppenwolf. His name was Kent Henry, and he was a great player. He later played with Bonnie Delaney and that kind of stuff. And he taught me how to play a lot of the bending bluesy stuff, But yeah, I'd say Kent Henry, and then later Danny Diaz. I took lessons from him, and we became. Now Danny actually took me under his wing, and we weren't really. It wasn't really a student teacher thing. It was more like we were friends. But he was much older. But he'd take me to jams. Johnny Thompson's was kind of a hang, yeah. I mean, they'd have people like Zeppelin would come in there, and the Stones would come in there, and I never met them there, but they had pictures all over the wall of these great people that would come in. But that's where I met Danny Diaz and actually Jimmy Delgado. Yeah, so it was pretty amazing. Well, yeah, when I was in my early 20s, I got a chance to play on an Airto record that got nominated for a Grammy. And Alphonso Johnson, the great bass player, got me on that. And Alphonso became one of my very good best friends, and we'd go see concerts and meet all the great artists at the time, like Chick Corea or Alan Halsworth or John McLaughlin. I sat in the rooms with just me and John McLaughlin and Al Di Meola, all the greats. I got to meet them all, Jeff Beck, and through Alphonso, because Alphonso was one of the greats, I recorded with Alphonso. In fact, we did this album. I played on one cut. It was a guitar feature, and it got nominated for a Grammy. And it was one song on the album that got played on the radio. Was an Alphonso Johnson instrumental. It featured my guitar playing. Romeo Prado met me, and then he brought me to the Midnighters in '76, and I toured with them back then. That was way back, Of course, El Chicano, I remember hearing Mickey and those guys play, and Bobby. I got to know, I played with those guys myself later, but just hearing that stuff Mickey would do with the octaves and the real nice guitar playing, that was an influence, And then Danny Diaz was great, rock and roll players. But the Delgado brothers became friends, and now they're still out there kicking butt, So we were all friends. We were all friends together at the same time. It was kind of a neat time, real exciting time. The other big one was when I got a chance to play with Paul McCartney. That was the same thing. Like when I was playing with him, I just felt like I was on the mountaintop, and I go, I like being up here. I like this rarefied air up here. I just felt so at home with him, And we had really a lot of great interactions and stuff, and a lot of comedic things. It's hard to explain, but just funny stuff, because he was deferring to us. He'd be saying, well, we were singing a good song called Good Day Sunshine. He goes, well, what's my part? He asked me, what's my part? I go, it's the lead. And I said it kind of funny, like, it's the lead, Then he asked me about another song, like, and in the end. He goes, well, what's that other chord? I go, well, you wrote it, what is it? That's how comfortable he made us feel, like we were just kind of clowning around a lot, you know. It's going to be 14 years, yeah. And it's Pastor Reverend Charles, Pastor Charles. He was a keyboard player with the Midnighters when Willie was doing the gig. And he asked me to do this Sunday thing, and it's just been, I mean, especially right now, this whole Black Lives Matter thing, it's just, you're in it, you know. Of course, it's all Zoom meeting now, but I mean, you're driving to Inglewood every Sunday, and we've done some stuff at the shelter, the homeless shelters and stuff, and you know, and it's just been really amazing to be part of that community because you see it firsthand. It's not like it's out there somewhere. It's they're my friends, you know. I love them. You know. Well, I have to say two, but I had to. Every guitar player has their one, but for me it was Clapton, Cream, and it's probably Crossroads. But the next piece, it's what is that called? That's boom, that Spoonful. It's an epic journey. I mean, it's just the live version is just epic, you know. And then Hendrix, boy, probably Machine Gun from Band of Gypsies. I got to see that group. That was ridiculous. I felt like it's like almost like you're watching Jesus Christ play the guitar or something. It's ridiculous. You know, I got to see it. You know. This is going to sound crazy because I'm 60-something. And I feel like I'm just getting started in some ways, not on the guitar, but now with the violin thing, I'm starting to record and doing like, you know, I want to write string trios and stuff. And for even for pop music, really, you know, like some like George Martin type parts and stuff. And I play viola too. And then the guitar is like, this is my life, you know, this is what I do. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited, which is weird because I think it's good to be excited at this age. A lot of guys give up. You know, or become drug addicts or they're dead, right? So I feel very fortunate to still have that enthusiasm. I might be delusional too, I don't know. But I'm having fun, so what?
Hello, my name is John Avila. I am a musician from Los Angeles, Southern California, San Gabriel, Rosemead area. It used to be South San Gabriel when I was born. And I've been playing music for going on 50 years. My parents both played. My mother was an incredible singer. She played guitar, and my dad played guitar, very similar to like a Willie Nelson style of guitar playing. When I was a little kid, they used to play backyard parties, family gatherings, sometimes at the park, and they can sing song after song after song for hours and hours and hours. And I grew up around that. And so I remember seeing grown men cry, and it became a very powerful thing in my eyes from an early age. And that's when I got to see the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show on a Sunday night. I saw the Beatles make their debut on the Ed Sullivan Show with all my cousins screaming and going nuts. And then I saw what rock and roll can do. I was lucky enough to have an older brother, my brother Sammy Avila, who is still killing, professional musician. He plays organ. And so it was great having my brother Sam as an influence, who turned me on to Hendrix and Traffic and a lot of really cool bands. You know, when it would have took me longer to get turned on to these bands, and because I had a 5-year-old older brother, you know, he had all the albums around at the house, so I got really into rock. A couple of friends of mine needed help moving into an apartment. And so they asked me, because I had a car, can you help us move some boxes? I said, yeah, I had my Volkswagen Beetle. So we're putting the stuff in there, and we look up and we notice there was an attic. So hey, look, there's an attic up there. We got a ladder, and we got up there with a flashlight. We got in there looking inside with the attic, and somebody had left a bass guitar in the attic. Somebody who lived there before, and it was a Paul McCartney Hofner Japanese copy. It wasn't a Hofner, but it was like a Japanese model copy of the bass. And he brought it down, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, because I knew my way around a guitar, but I never aspired to be a guitar player. But here I am, and I'm playing this bass. I was like, wow, this is really cool. This is just like Paul's bass. And I'm like, And I happened to have $15 in my pocket, and my friend sold it to me for $15. And that's the only reason why I ever started playing bass. It was totally an accident. I took the bass home and I started playing. And I never put it down. I probably practiced from day one. I started practicing 15 hours a day. And within around 6 months of my first getting that bass, I was in a band from San Gabriel called Blowout, and we were opening up for Van Halen in backyard parties in Pasadena. I was playing one night at what is now the Viper Room in Hollywood. I was playing there 5 nights a week, and a guy approached me one night after a break time, and he says, there's a band looking for a bass player. They're auditioning tomorrow, and I think you're the guy. He goes, here's my card. You call them up and tell them I sent you. So I ended up going down there to audition, and the band was El Chicano. And El Chicano, I'd never met these guys, and I auditioned and I got the gig. My first gig was opening for Santana in front of 40,000 people. And I started touring, and from that day on, it just never stopped. One day, I was hanging out, and I get a call from this guy's needed a bass player at this place called Josephina's. It was in Sherman Oaks, and he says, "You're going to be playing with the members of Rufus." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll come down and do that." And I ended up going down, and what happened was, the story I heard, and this is the story that was told to me, was Bobby Watson, the bass player of Rufus, had gone to Japan and met a girl and didn't come back in time. And so they were last minute need a bass player. And I get the call, I ended up going down and playing, and I must have done well because they asked me to come back the next week. And then the week after that, and then the week after that, I ended up staying for a year on this gig, and every night Al Jarreau would be in the audience, Chaka Khan would be in the audience, I mean, on and on. Members of Chicago, even Jocko came in one night, and Michael McDonald would be in the audience, and all these incredible musicians would come in, and it was such a hang. This was late 70s. Our first drummer was Dave Garibaldi of Tower of Power. You know, if we're gonna start with a drummer, might as well get Dave Garibaldi. And we were rehearsing it. Actually, Dave played with us more during the time when we were more writing and developing the sound. And although Dave never ended up gigging with us, but we did a lot of work with him, and we used to go down to his place. He lived out in the San Fernando Valley, and we learned a lot from him, but we ended up using another drummer when we first did our first gig at Madame Wong's Chinatown. And this would have been right around 1980, 81. I think it was like 1980. And it was right when the punk rock scene was happening. And we started right off in Madame Wong's Chinatown. And then we did about 2 gigs with a drummer, and we invited a drummer. I had met this drummer on a bebop gig from San Gabriel, who I had never met in San Gabriel. His name was Johnny Vatos Hernandez. And we met on this bebop gig, and we started jamming in our garages. And we both decided we really loved playing with each other, and we both liked jazz, but we both liked punk rock. And it was a combination of that we liked playing outside, and we liked odd meter and just weird. And so I had invited Vatos to a Food for Feet show at Madame Wong's. And then while we were playing the gig, the drummer told us that he was leaving on tour and he couldn't do the next couple of gigs. So Vatos was there. I go, "Hey man, you want to play with us? This drummer can't make it." And he ended up jumping in on the next gig and never stopped playing with us. Played with us for the next 10 years. So right around end of 83, 84, beginning of 84, Vatos and I were still playing together in Food for Feet, and Oingo Boingo ends up losing their bass player and their keyboard player. They had both quit the band. And so Boingo was having auditions. And I was invited to audition for Oingo Boingo, and I got the gig. And that began a whole 11 years of playing with Oingo Boingo from 1984 to 95. My father owned a reel-to-reel Ampex machine, and since I was a kid, he always had a little tape machine, quarter-inch machine around. So my interest in recording goes way, way back from when I was born. So it's something I never lost. And so once I started, recording and being in the studio all the time with Danny Elfman, one day I was in the studio with them and I was just hanging out, and I'd made some suggestions to Danny through the guy who was Steve Bartik, who was producing, about possible, hey, maybe you should try this that way, or maybe you should try singing it this way. And Danny ended up liking my direction, or whatever it is I had suggested that he do. And then the next night he invited me to come to the studio again and give some input. And that's where my production career started, right then and there. And then after that, on the next album, the Boingo Alive, they ended up making me a full-fledged co-producer of the band. And that's where I learned what I do now. And it wasn't until Oingo Boingo ended in 95. And it was right around that time that I decided to start working on my own studio. And I started building my studio, which is still here today, Brando's Paradise. And when Oingo Boingo ended, the first 2 years that I started producing bands, I didn't charge anybody. I would just say, come on in. If I liked the band, I would produce you, just on the fact that it was, one, if I mess up, then you can't say much because I'm not charging you, so if it sounds bad. And the second time, the second thing was it allowed me to take more chances, be more creative. And eventually it started to turn into something I really, really enjoyed doing. And that's when the band Real Big Fish came calling. And I produced their first album, Turn the Radio Off, and it went gold. It was a big record in LA. And that really helped get my production career off. In 2016, I got to go to Europe and play with Neil Young. And I got to play in Paris with Neil Young. And that was because Neil is one of my all-time heroes. And so getting to share the stage and getting to rehearse with him and just sit with him in a chair next to each other and just jamming out on guitars and bass with him was an incredible experience. And he was just gracious and wonderful to play with. Riding on the plane with him and having dinner with him every night. One really great story, when we were here rehearsing without Neil, we came here to run through the songs. One song we didn't do was the song Cripple Creek Ferry. And I said, man, we should do Cripple Creek Ferry. Hey, hey, Cripple Creek Ferry, mama's going down, it's a mighty fine, So they were like, yeah, but Neil's never wanted to do that song. So we get to Paris, and what happens? Neil says, hey, there's a song I want you guys to do. It's not on the list of songs I told you to learn, and he starts playing Cripple Creek Ferry. And all the guys look at me, and I was like, I told you, right? So we ended up doing Cripple Creek Ferry. The next night, we get a Rolling Stone put a blog out that was the very first time he had ever performed that song in front of an audience, live. Cripple Creek Ferry. So that's incredible to say I got to play it with him first.
Hey, Cripple Creek Ferry, run into the overhanging tree. Make way for the Cripple Creek Ferry. The water's going down, it's a mighty dry stream.
Well, my family, they already had bands since we were growing up. My uncle and his 3 sons lived across the street. My mom played piano. My brother we both played guitar, Mexican guitars. When we were little, I was already like 4 years old. By the time I got 6 years old, that's when they threw me on the bass. My mom and my cousin Louie, Here's the bass, do tung tung tung. We played like a lot of Little Joe and the Latinier stuff back then. And my uncle's the one that actually taught us all how to kind of play, you know what I mean? He's the one that had the leader of the band. So it was called the Latin Boys back then. And we just grew up into it, man, and little by little, you know, I got on there. And then my cousin Junior went to Vietnam. My brother jumped on the drums. So because my uncle played sax, and his son played, Junior played drums, and then his other two sons played tenor and alto, and he played tenor too. And then my mom played piano, like I said, and you know, they threw me on the bass, and then we took it from there, and we started playing. I was 6 years old playing in the band. We used to play every weekend, man. Jamaicas, weddings, quinceañeras, everything. Well, Little Joe was, well, we used to play all that. Little Joe, Sonny Osuna, Agustin Ramirez, Joe Bravo, all that kind of stuff. So one of the bass players was Rick Reyes. He was the bass player for Little Joe back then. He turned out to be one of his brothers-in-laws or whatever. So I got to know him later on, so that was pretty cool. Well, later on, I was in a band called Sabor, and we used to play all the top 40, and we played Latin, and then Poncho was in that band too, and he would play congas. But Poncho, when we had the other band playing Jamaicas and all that stuff, he wasn't even playing congas yet. He was just friends with my cousins, and he was a singer of some of the other bands that they had, you know what I mean? But we got him in the band to sing the English stuff, and that's before he got play congas, and he would kind of fit around with the flute and stuff, you know what I mean? But that was back, and that's how long I know Poncho, you know what I mean? Tex-Mex, top 40, we play a little bit of Latin stuff that we could, you know, that we were Latin stuff, until we got to really listen to Mongo and Cajero and Tito Puente, all that stuff later on. You know, you develop all that stuff. When we went to go see them, that's how they do it, you know what I mean? But other than that, we learned how to play through albums. You know, a lot of it was my brother teaching, I mean, having me listen to different genres of different kind of music, and, you know, when he was gone, I'd get in there, in bed, he has this hole in his bed, put the earphones on and put all his albums on. It was great. Well, me, Poncho, and my brother, we always hung out together, you know. We used to ditch school and go to his house, and I can't tell you what we did. And we used to hang out with listen to Cal Jader, Mongo, and Tito Puente, all the stuff in his garage, you know what I mean? He got some congas, he's, you know, wood shedding back there. And then once in a while we'd go to the lighthouse and we'd see Mongo or somebody, man. It's like, oh man, that was bad. We sit right in the front, brother, feet on the stage. It was cool, man. But you know, we just grew up into, my uncle used to listen to all that jazz stuff, you know, and he listened to a lot of different kind of music. He was a great player too. Most of the songs, like even with Poncho's band, since I didn't read, I could read chord charts, but things that had to be played, either the trombone player or the keyboard player would play it. They try to play note by note. I go, no, play it in time the way it's supposed to sound. And then I got it, you know, I got it. And then I would just memorize it. Every time we played a song, it's pretty much memorized, you know what I mean? In 1970, me and my brother and a bunch of us, a couple of different bands, we used to hang out all the time during high school. 1970, I was 9th grade. We went to, I think it was either the Roxy or the Whiskey, and we heard Tower of Power for the first time. Man, that changed my whole life as far as funk. I didn't know nothing about funk. You know, I was put Tex-Mex and top 40 and that kind of stuff like that, but when they played, it's like, changed my whole life. I wish, one of my dreams was to play with Tower of Power, at least one song or something, but I play what I play, and I play by ear, and I play by ear. That's how I play. You know, I can't explain anything else but that. There was one time, I think we looked it up, it was 1985, the first Queen Mary Jazz Festival. And Miles Davis was on it, and a bunch of other bands. But, you know, it was like at the Queen Mary, in the parking lot, full, packed all the way to the back. And the other side of the fence, all kinds of people still trying to get in. They wouldn't get in, a few thousand. And then on the side was the water, people in boats and stuff. So it was bad. Like when we started playing with Poncho's band, it was the afternoon. And then before we finished, it started getting dark and the lights came out and all that stuff. And I had like an out-of-body experience. Well, they didn't like it. I don't think they liked us at first. Oh, the Mexicans can't play. Until we got to New York. And then we played like the Village Gate and SOB, different places. And all these guys would come out to see us and shit. Everybody wanted to play with the band. Oh man, everybody was there. Tito Puente, Caco, everybody and their mothers was out there. watching us to play, and then all of a sudden you got guys lined up on the side of the stage. Yeah, let me play, you know, everybody. Yeah. So by the time we finished one of the songs, nobody else was up there but Poncho. And he got mad at us. He goes, "No, we can't play. You know, let's play." You know, it's like, so those guys on the stage, and you know, but we all kind of be good friends with everybody, and they respected us as one of them. You know, like Tito Puente and Eddie Palmieri, Mongo, all of them. You know what I mean? We were cool. Andy Gonzalez. I mean, he was one of my buddies too, man. It's too many to even think. You know what I mean? I'm on a lot of recordings. I don't even know how many. With Poncho, I think it was like 28, and then we got nominated 4 times for Grammys, and we won once. That was pretty cool. And played Carnegie Hall about 4 times, you know, with Tito Puente, Oscar De Leon, different bands. It was really great, you know what I mean? But just recording with Poncho's band, we got to play with a whole bunch of stars, because every time we did a CD, there was a special guest. My brother had a lot to do with me staying a musician, you know what I mean? My only brother. Yeah, so Ramon Banda, you know, call him Monzi. But yeah, we traveled all over the world together, room together, and that was our dream, you know what I mean? To go play with it, meet everybody, and we got to meet, like I said, Cal Jader, and Poncho got to play with Cal Jader. That's where he got his break, you know? And then we had some other bands here in LA, and then with Bob Redfield, and when after Cal Jader died, then, you know, we still had the band. And when Poncho was in town, he'd come and play with us, you know what I mean? So we decided just, you know what, since Poncho's getting a name on him, maybe we'll just change it to Poncho Sanchez and get better gigs and get paid, all that stuff. And that's how that started right there. So, you know, we already had the band and stuff. It was called Montuno. Well, I sent some pictures to you. You'll see when I was like 6 years old, the bass was too big like this. I was playing it like this. You know what I mean? Like an upright. I'll show you a picture of it. But yeah, that's how I started pretty much. I don't remember doing it until I seen the pictures later on. But when we started in Poncho's band, I started with a Fender, you know what I mean? Doing that. And then my brother found this baby bass in Santa Barbara. So we went and bought it, $250, brand new. It would look like it was brand new with a stand, the extension, all that stuff. $250, you know what I mean? Now you can't get anything for $3,000 or $4,000, you know? That was my first, and I just, you know, the strings are about that high like that. And I go, man, it's baby, but it sounded good, you know what I mean? This is what, because when you play like this, it's different than when you play like this. You know what I mean? Like upright. It is. And then when you play the Latin stuff, oh yeah, well, you know, we should get drunk and balls out, you know what I mean? That's how we did it back then. And then somebody told me, oh no, man, you can lower that thing. In the back, there's a little button, you know, you loosen this and this and that, and then lower it, and it's, oh man, did a world of difference from the strings being that high to like that high, you know what I mean? And it was like, oh man, yeah, that's better. And you know, I just learned how to pluck like, I played more like Oscar De Leon more than I do like a jazz player. But that's just how, you know, I was self-taught. You know, I was playing a lot, enough to, you know, afford a house and be able to, you know, to, how you say, the credit and all that stuff, because I was playing, it was good. So now things are totally different.